Welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club, and I'm back.
You know, we're always glad to see you, but can I just say today we are especially glad to see you. You had an incident that was not expected, certainly.
You know, Terry, I had a stroke, and I wasn't even aware of it, and I was unconscious, and all of a sudden, you know, I have a pacemaker. I had so-called atrial fibrillation. I'm kind of like an old car. They just keep putting parts in.
I like to think of it as the bionic man myself.
But I've got this pacemaker, and the doctor said, hey, you don't need any blood thinner. You're cool. And so I said, all right, fine. So I'm not taking a blood thinner. And all of a sudden, this thing popped through.
Did you have any warning ahead of time?
None whatsoever.
No sign whatsoever.
I was out with Scott Ross and his wife for dinner the night before. He said,
well, there you go.
He said it was like the Last Supper. I mean, come on.
Only Scott.
Yeah, and so I said, did you have lamb? And no.
So do you have, as you experienced these symptoms, it was really others who saw it in you?
Oh, yeah. Well, we had a lady over at the house who cleans house, and she noticed something was wrong.
Really? And
she notified Gordon, I think, and Gordon, of course, Cold Chris, he's our head of security. He said, don't put him in an ambulance, don't send him, because they have to go to the nearest hospital.
Yeah, I didn't know that until...
He said, take him immediately down to Centera General, Norfolk General. And when they were down there, they were all ready to go, and they injected a port along my shoulder with a clot killer. And I was unconscious. I wasn't even aware of it.
And how long, once you had that injection, until you came?
About a minute. 2 minutes.
A minute or two,
And I came back, and the doctor looked, he said, it's a miracle. He said, I'm unconscious. He said, raise your hand. I raised my hand. He said, raise it up higher, raise it up. And
unbelievable.
It's a miracle.
I mean, this happened to you on a Friday.
Yeah.
And you were home on Sunday.
I
got your schedule. He was home on Sunday. I got that part down. Yeah.
Whatever,
I mean, to be released like that after experiencing something like that, I mean, you were unconscious, and you know, a lot of people wouldn't have come back from that.
Well,
that drug is quite the...
Well, it was amazing.
It's called TPA, right?
Right.
Yeah, and we're going to... I want to share a story that we did on this, because it's important to understand the signs that your housekeeper saw, and to know, you know, even things like, I didn't know that we had a stroke center at a particular hospital here. I didn't realize that there was, I don't know if this is across the country, but if you have an ambulance come, it takes you to the nearest hospital. They have to do that. You would have lost time, and I think there's a time frame in there that...
For every minute that you have a stroke, without being treated, you lose 2 million cells in your brain.
Wow.
For every minute.
Wow.
And so mine was just starting, and it got there immediately, but for every minute. So if it's a half an hour or an hour, think of that.
Yes.
You lose, it was like 120 million cells in your brain. I mean, it's for an hour, it's terrible.
Well, we need to know how to spot someone who is experiencing a stroke, and about this clot-busting drug called TPA. Lori Johnson tells us why it's so important to use it as soon as possible after a stroke.
Most strokes are caused by clots that block blood flow to the brain. When that happens, brain cells die, some 2 million each minute. To limit the damage, the drug TPA can quickly dissolve the clot to get blood flowing again. Dr. Bruce Lowe, Director of Emergency Medicine at Centera Norfolk General Hospital, calls TPA a game changer.
I've seen patients who have had significant neurological symptoms who have completely resolved with this drug.
With less damage comes faster recovery. Most TPA patients can go home, not to a rehabilitation facility. While TPA can restore people to normal, as many as 90% of stroke victims are unable to receive it because they arrive at the hospital too late. TPA must be given within 4 hours of the onset of stroke symptoms, and many people don't recognize the signs soon enough. They happen suddenly and often include numbness or weakness of the face, arm, leg, or especially on one side of the body. Confusion, also not speaking or understanding well. Trouble seeing. Difficulty walking, dizziness, or losing balance.
And you may not recognize that you're having a stroke. A lot of times people maybe are in denial because you're not having pain, or it doesn't feel urgent like a heart attack does. So a lot of times people wait and delay, and our ability to treat with interventions like TPA don't become an option anymore, unfortunately.
Patients should call 911 immediately upon experiencing any of these symptoms because emergency crews can start treatment on the way to the hospital.
Definitely, the sooner that we give the TPA, the better. So we know that if we give them the first 60 minutes of symptom onset, that people have the best outcomes.
Learning stroke symptoms and taking quick action should they appear matter greatly because beating a stroke often comes down to beating the clock. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
An amazing drug and wonderful sound information on some things that we should all be aware of.
She said, I said it wrong. It's not an hour, it's every minute.
Every minute.
You lose 2 million cells.
Yeah.
Every minute.
And many people are not with anyone else when this happens and pass out, and then...
Well, for example, when my wife, she also had a stroke. So we brought our EMT from CBN, who put her in an ambulance, and of course they did what they're supposed to do. They called her and took her to the local hospital, the closest hospital, where they did a CAT scan, and they said, look, she's got a blood clot. Well, big deal. So then we hauled her down to Centera, Norfolk General, and by then it was 1:30 in the morning, so she had her incident about 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
So you're looking at 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And of course, she had a debilitating stroke, which she's still recovering from a year later.
Yeah. Well, that window is a small window. The reason we need to all know these signs and watch for them. We're so glad you're back.
I'm back on television.